So here I am using the core container, correct? So the interface and the class dictates that it is a core container. So for reading the XML file, the XML file is in the resource folder, right? So to read whatever is there in the resource folder, I will make a object of this resource, okay, and then give the path of the resource folder. So you see it's under resources and this is the name of the XML file, and then I can pass this object as an argument whenever I want to make the object of the core container. So this is only when you are using the core container. If you are using the J2EE container, no need to make object of resources. Directly you can pass the XML file as a string. So which is the interface for core container? Any guesses? Which is the class? You see over here, class math XML application context, and here it is taking just a string as an argument. So directly you can pass all this as a string. No need to create any resource. So this is the difference. So one of the differences between core container and J2EE container is in the core container I have to pass the bean as a resource, and here I can pass it as a string, okay, and the rest remains the same. So you can stick around with this also. Okay.
सर सर ये क्लास पाथ रिसोर्स है, वो एक क्लास है इसका मतलब, और रिसोर्स एक इंटरफेस, क्योंकि हम लोग रिसोर्स के रेफरेंस से क्लास पाथ रिसोर्स का ऑब्जेक्ट क्रिएट करते हैं, और क्लास पाथ जो रिसोर्स है उस वो यूज होता है रीड करने के लिए रिसोर्स फोल्डर.
Perfect, absolutely nice. So now if you observe, how many beans do I have in my bean class, my bean XML file?
One bean.
Okay. So now if we set the, okay, if I set the scope now to be singleton, to be what?
Singleton
means what? Now the third attribute. Now the third attribute. No, this is the third attribute I am showing. Okay. So singleton means what now?
All reference pointing to the same object.
So what it does is, in your singleton scope, it will create the bean up front, correct, and put it in the IOC container. Put it in the IOC container. So when the container will load, the object will be created up front, right? So how do I know that the object is created? So what is the proof that the object is created? It will invoke the constructor, correct?
Yes, sir.
So now if I come here and if I display over here sysout and hi, so here your application, your J2EE container is loaded, correct? When we create the object of the J2EE container.
Yes, sir.
So what will it do first? Will it display high first, or will it display me student object created first? What is the difference between scope prototype and scope singleton? We had discussed that in length, right? At length we had discussed it.
Early instantiation
And lazy instantiation, correct? So singleton is what?
Yes. Early instantiation.
You see, do you see over here? What is it telling?
Pre-instantiation singleton.
Pre-instantiating singletons. So now whenever my factory is this J2EE container is loaded, at that time it will create the object of all the singleton beans, and by default scope is singleton. By default scope is
Singleton.
So did I specify any scope? So if I don't specify any scope, by default it will be considered as what?
Singleton.
It will be considered as singleton. So all the singleton beans will be present. The object of all the singleton beans will be created, okay, and placed in the IOC container. At what time?
At the time of loading.
So this line number 18, it is loading the IOC container. So will it display me student object created first, or will it display me high first? This is my question.
Student object first.
So, and there are how many singleton beans? There are how many singleton beans over here?
2, sir.
2. So it will, and they both are which class?
Student class, sir.
So it will display me the constructor twice, right?
Yes, sir.
And then it will display me
high.
Correct? Let's and then whatever you want to display. Got it?
Yes, sir.
Now if I switch the scope from singleton to prototype, what will happen? What will happen? Prototype.
Lazy instantiation.
Means what? Means what?
When we call the method,
when we need the object, when we request for the object, that time the object will create it, will be created, correct? So now what will happen? It will load. Will it create the object beforehand?
No, sir.
So first what will it display me?
High,
and then the constructor will be called only for which bean?
102.
Will it call the constructor for one S1?
No, sir.
So how many times will it display student object created?
1 time, sir.
So what will be the flow? What will be the trace the output of this now?
High, and then student object is created, and then 102 bin.
Got it? Understood?
Yes, sir.
So this is the difference. And if you observe, this feature is available in the which container?
J2EE.
If I would stick around with my old container, would I get this facility? Let's check.
No, sir.
Let's check. Okay, let's check if I have a singleton. Let's switch to singleton and check if we are getting this facility. Okay, so most of the practical is done on the J2EE container. I should have changed. I should have saved my file. It is telling me. अगर आप बीन फाइल को सिलेक्ट करके रन करोगे ना एप्लीकेशन को, तो वो एक फाइल क्रिएट करता है mybin.out.xml। ये कुछ काम की फाइल डिलीट करो उसके वजह से पूरा स्लो हो गया। इसके लिए कभी भी वहाँ से रन मत करना, ड्राइवर ऐप में जाना, राइट क्लिक करना और रन एज जावा एप्लीकेशन करना, तो फट से रन हो जाता है। ठीक है, डिफरेंस समझ में आया तुम लोग को प्रोटोटाइप में और सिंगलटन में? तो नाउ आई विल डू ऑल माई प्रैक्टिकल्स ऑन द which container. Which container will we do the practical on, core or J2EE?
Core, sir.
No, I've switched. I've commented the core. I'm using this. So now if the student, now in the bean, if you observe, I'm just passing the primitives. I'm just passing the primitives. Okay. So now if the student has an address, let's say the student has an address, so we make an address class, correct? So here we can just have private integer street number, the small s, and let's say private string locality with a small l. Okay. And now make constructors and getter setters for this. So I go to source, generate getter setters, select all, generate. I have a habit of adding the constructors up front. So from wherever you click, right click now, at that geographical place it creates. So generate constructor using fields, generate here, and then I take this and I create an empty constructor. Now I want to make a bean of this. So how do I make a bean of this address? Tell me. Okay, let's just keep it simple. Flat number and with society name. Okay, flat number, society name. So I have to make all the changes also. Okay. We can refactor it. We can refactor it wherever you have. Remove flat number, keep assignments with side effects, fix problem with same category, fix to problem. What happened? You can refactor the code, like wherever changes are there. Now at one click the code changes. Yeah, but now let's do it. So wherever you have flat number, इसको कचरा कर देगा ये, कचरा कर देगा। So ये default है, source, generate getter setters, select all, generate. Source, generate constructor using fields, generate. Okay. So now I want to create a bean of this in my XML. How will I create a bean of this? Tell me. Any guesses? And I want to do setter dependency injection. Okay, for address let's do constructor dependency injection. So what do we have to do? Tell me. Make a bean, right? So let's give it A1. Which class?
Address.
And now I'll be passing these elements via the constructor, so I can afford to remove the setters over here. If I don't want to, as the data is private, if I want to read outside the class, I'll read the getters, but I'm not depending I'm not doing the dependency injection via setter method, so I can remove the setter methods over here. No need for setters, because I'm injecting this through the what? Constructor. So I go to my mybean class. Now tell me. So what did I tell you all? When we do use setter, what do we use? Property. And when we want to do using constructor, what do we use? Constructor args. What do we use? So if you just put a C, it will help you out over here. Constructor args, okay? Args. And you got to follow the order in which they are there in the constructor, which is the first property.
Flat number.
So there, here give value equals to, okay, the flat number 15. Irrespective the data type is integer, but try to give whatever value you want to give in XML in double quotes. Then which is the next constructor argument?
Name.
Society name, correct? Makes sense? So now if I come to the driver app and I want to make an object of address, how will I do? Say what? What is the bean for address?
A1.
A1, right? So I come here and say A1. What all changes do I have to make more now? Typecast it to what?
Address.
And then using this A object, I want to display the flat number and society name. How will I do it? How will I do it? If I want to display the flat number and society name over here, how will I do it? Line number 17, line number 23. You call these methods, right? So as the data is private, it cannot be accessed directly, so we can access it via its getter methods. Make sense?
Yes.
Got it? So it will create the objects of all the beams because they are singleton, and then I am making this is what? So the default constructor of the address class does not have anything. My question to you guys is, why is it not showing address class object created? Because my default constructor of address is not having anything, correct?
Yes.
So the address is also of singleton scope, so it is creating object of address beforehand, but it is not displaying anything because there's nothing in the constructor of address. So we can also comment out the constructor of student. So if I comment this out and do a run, it will directly display me the information. Okay, now
Yes, sir.
what I want is, now I want this student to have an address. What will I say? Address. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
So how do you want to inject this address into the student? Using what? We are creating the student bean using what? Properties, right? So we will inject this via a setter. So write one more setter for address. Correct? Now this is a what type? Primitive or non-primitive?
Non-primitive.
So primitive is call by value or call by reference? Primitive is call by value or call by reference?
Call by value, sir.
This address.
Address is called by reference.
So this you will just say, you will use reference. Okay. So this, what will you do is, you will say like this, property. Okay, and what is the property name? Address. Okay, and you will say ref. Okay, there will not be any value. You will say reference. What will you say? Reference equals to which bean?
A1.
What is the property name? Address. Got it? Because this is, you are injecting a reference type. This is how you inject a reference type. Just directly you will say property and just give the reference. Property, address and reference equals to K1. And now if in my student I want to display in which building he is staying, how will I display that? The address reference which I have, of that I will call what? Get society name.
Society.
Okay, so let's try to get that. So okay, now I have to make object of what? If I want to call the display, I have given the address to which bean? Which bean have I given the address to?
S.
S1. So I have to go, and what changes do I have to make then? Student and S1 is of type student, and with that I can directly have to call display, right? I'll name it as SOBJ, and directly SOBJ to what? Directly invoke the display method. Got it? How you try to inject non-primitives? Yes, no, maybe. Not understood. फिर एक और एट्रीब्यूट है इसका, डिपेंडेंसी चेक. क्या नाम से है?
Dependency check.
तो DEP और कंट्रोल स्पेस बार आया. तो ये डिपेंडेंसी
Yes, sir.
चेक के वैल्यूज क्या होते हैं वो देखो अभी। तो इक्वल टू जब देंगे इक्वल टू तो वैल्यूज दिखाएगा आपको, दिख रहा है। तो अगर मैं करता हूँ सिंपल, क्या करता हूँ मैं,
Simple.
तो मुझे जितने भी प्रिमिटिव्स, जितने भी क्या है, जितने भी क्या है क्लास के अंदर,
Primitives है.
उनको वैल्यू देना कंपलसरी हो जाएगा बीन के थ्रू। नॉन प्रिमिटिव को नहीं दिया तो चल जाएगा, इसको आप कमेंट कर सकते हैं
अगर हम सिंपल सिलेक्ट करते हैं.
सिंपल सिलेक्ट करते हैं। तो जितने भी क्लास के प्रिमिटिव डेटा है उनको आपको वैल्यू देना कंपलसरी है। नॉन प्रिमिटिव को कंपलसरी नहीं है, और प्रिमिटिव को कंपलसरी हो जाएगा। बट जब हम यहाँ पर जाएंगे तो फिर ये नल पॉइंटर दिखाएगा, क्योंकि राइट, क्योंकि एड्रेस इनिशियलाइज नहीं हुआ है।
Yes, sir.
गेट इन द पॉइंट। तो आप ये चीज आपको निकालनी पड़ेगी। तो उसने क्या किया, जितने भी प्रिमिटिव है उसको कंपलसरी कर दिया कि उसकी आपको प्रॉपर्टी कंपलसरी देना है, क्योंकि आपने डिपेंडेंसी चेक क्या रखे हुए,
Simple.
सिंपल। अगर मैं डिपेंडेंसी चेक कर दूं ऑब्जेक्ट्स, क्या कर दूं,
Objects.
ऑब्जेक्ट्स, तो फिर आपको जितने भी नॉन प्रिमिटिव्स है उनको देना कंपलसरी हो जाएगा। प्रिमिटिव्स को आप स्किप कर सकते हैं, primitives can be skipped, but non primitives को आपको प्रॉपर्टी देना जरूरी हो जाएगा। and this is how you comment in your XML, like comment in HTML। जो नॉन प्रिमिटिव को कंपलसरी करना पड़ेगा आपको, अभी प्रिमिटिव्स को आप स्किप कर सकते हैं। अभी जब मैं गया इधर स्टूडेंट क्लास में, तो ये मैं क्या करूँगा, एड्रेस डॉट गेट सोसाइटी में फ्लैट नंबर, जो भी, क्योंकि मेरे ये तो सब नल आएंगे ना, इनको तो मैंने इनिशियलाइज किया ही नहीं। ठीक है, तो सिर्फ उतना आ रहा है। और अगर मुझे दोनों भी चाहिए कि कंपलसरी है कि जितने प्रिमिटिव और नॉन प्रिमिटिव दोनों भी आपने करना है, क्या कर दो, क्या कर दो, डिपेंडेंसी चेक इक्वल्स टू ऑल कर दो, क्या कर दो,
All.
ऑल। तो अभी कभी कंपलसरी आपको जितने भी क्लास के अंदर प्रॉपर्टीज है, भले वो प्रिमिटिव हो या नॉन प्रिमिटिव हो, आपको उसको असाइन करना है। Now you can revert back to and then put over here the roll number and S name, तो वैल्यू उठा लेगा वहां से। समझ में आ रही है। तो ये एक और एट्रीब्यूट हो गया, क्या नाम का हो गया, डिपेंडेंसी चेक।
Check.
Try to practice these and so see the theoretical part of it now. Okay, what is bean, what is a bean? So if asked what is a bean, it forms the backbone of your application, right? Beans जो है सारा डेटा सारा beans के अंदर ही तो है। They are instantiated, assembled and managed by the Spring IOC container. Beans are created with configuration metadata, जो आप XML में पास कर रहे हैं ना, जो हम XML में पास कर रहे हैं वो सब क्या है, configurable metadata that you supply to the container। तो हम उसको बोलते हैं get bean, वहां से लेके आओ in the form of XML bean definition, दिख रहा है। और फिर bean definition contains the following called configuration। तो उसमें how to create a bean, प्रॉपर्टीज क्या देने हैं, कंस्ट्रक्टर से देना है तो कैसे देना है, प्रिमिटिव नॉन प्रिमिटिव सब, देन बीन का लाइफ साइकिल भी, कंस्ट्रक्टर के बाद कौन सा फंक्शन कॉल करना है, डिस्ट्रक्टर के पहले कौन सा कॉल करना है, वो सब। और bean के dependencies भी. Student class is dependent on the address class. Now what all properties does this have? ID. What is ID? Yes. Now can someone read? This attribute specifies the bean identify uniquely. तो हर एक bean एक ही ID से एक ही bean बना सकते हैं आप. तो S1 नाम का अगर bean है तो वापस S1 नाम की ID से दूसरा bean नहीं बना सकते. ठीक है, यूनिकली. ठीक है, तो ये उसके अंदर हम ऐड कर सकते. सेकंड थिंग क्या, उसका क्लास. ठीक है, ये भी मैंडेटरी है. और ये है फुल्ली क्वालिफाइड नेम ऑफ द क्लास. व्हाट इज फुल्ली क्वालिफाइड नेम? सारे पैकेजेस के साथ, सिर्फ क्लास का नाम नहीं. स्कोप क्या है? स्कोप है कि दिस एट्रीब्यूट स्पेसिफाइज द स्कोप ऑफ द ऑब्जेक्ट क्रिएटेड. इफ स्कोप इज सिंगलटन व्हिच इज बाय डिफॉल्ट, देन इट इज कॉल्ड अर्ली इंस्टेंशिएशन और व्हाटएवर. इंस्टेंशिएशन बोलो या इनिशियलाइजेशन बोलो. Early initialized bean tells the IOC container to create a bean instance at the startup time of the IOC container. And if scope is prototype, then it is called as lazy instantiation. Lazy instantiation tells the IOC container to create the bean instance when it is first requested, rather at the time of startup. Okay. Then we had constructor arg. This is used to inject the dependencies via the constructor properties. This is used to inject the dependencies via setter method of the class. 6. Dependency check. Char value. Simple means all the primitive attribute must be passed. Object means all the non-primitive must be passed. All means primitive plus non-primitive should be passed. And none means don't need to specify any value. Make sense?